And we're back here on the KRON 4 Morning News, and again we wanted to give you a quick live look here at the Bay Bridge shutdown. This is of course what we've been following all weekend long, and work continues this morning. In fact, this is a Caltrans camera looking at the span here from Yerba Buena Island, looking out towards Oakland, and it's that section there right in the middle of your screen that was slid into place over the weekend, and by all accounts it went fairly smooth. In fact, they're doing the last minute connections here on that section of the bridge to get everything up and running and working just fine. That isn't the only thing though that they're working on this morning. In fact, there was another problem that cropped up over the weekend, a cracked eye-bar, as a matter of fact, that's got, well, it has them worried as to whether or not they're going to actually meet that 5 a.m. Tuesday deadline like they had thought. In fact, I've got an image here on Google Earth. I want to bring you out here and show you where this crack was discovered. Because the bridge was shut down over the weekend, inspectors used that opportunity to go out there and do a complete top-to-bottom look at the bridge to see if there were any other problems to take care of, and they discovered one. So here's the section here right as the bridge meets up with Yerba Buena where they're doing the swap out. This crack has nothing to do with that. In fact, I'll move the map here and we'll take this full screen so you can get a good look at it. The section that they discovered was off here towards the right here. This section of the bridge, look at it up close here, right in here. You see where my cursor is moving around? Right in here is where they found that cracked eye-bar, and we've got a Caltrans image here to show you as well what we're talking about here. We'll roll that tape. That's where the section was cracked, and in a minute you'll see an up-close view of that crack here on the tape here, and there it is. So do you see that little crack there on the lower portion of the screen? That's what they found. It was big enough that they said even if the bridge hadn't been shut down over this weekend, once they discovered this crack, they would have to shut down the bridge. That's how big of a crack and much of a concern it was. Well, you see that brownish metal there on the screen, that saddle as it's called? That is basically the splint that they had to custom fabricate over the weekend, and that's what they're going to be installing there to help basically brace that section of the bridge to keep that crack from growing any larger. And they had to have it custom fabricated out in Arizona and flown in on a charter jet, and this is exclusive KRON 4 video of those components flying or being offloaded here at Oakland Airport, being put on the back of a big rig. And you see that CHP officer in the front? It had a special CHP escort from the airport out there to the bridge so that there'd be no time lost here in transit. It's an incredible feat, and they're obviously trying to get that work done as well as the new span to get everything done. Here's more what Caltrans had to say, though, about that crack and their efforts to fix it on time.
This is the lower saddle. I think one of your colleagues mentioned that it was about 18,000 pounds. So we've got 9,000 pounds on one saddle, 9,000 pounds on the other. They'll lift them up, install them, check the radius, see if the radius of the pin and the radius of the saddle match up, the thickness. There's some fabrication that they can adjust.
It's a 10-man crew that's going to be doing this work. They're laying out all of the materials. The equipment is on hand. They're doing some of the pattern work to make sure that this is all going to fit into place.
And again, let's go back outside live and take a look from the underside of the bridge. KRON 4's Yoli Aceves, she was out there on Friday with us, giving us this same shot. She's back out there again today, keeping a close eye on the work being done. Good morning, Yoli.
Hey, good morning, James. Well, you can see some workers right now on that new section, the detour section that connects the old eastern span with the Yerba Buena tunnel and that detour span. You can hear them pounding away, and they're actually working pretty hard. And you know, if it wasn't for that crack, this bridge would be opening probably even early, because they've, you know, this whole project, and this is the span that we're talking about. This section of the bridge is what got, you know, you remember on Friday it was out here on these cracks.
Oh, Yoli, and I apologize, but your video and your audio just dropped out on us, so we'll visit with you again in just a little bit. But she was giving us that look from underneath up there at the new section that has been successfully slid into place. And as she was telling us, they're working hard this morning to finish off the last bits of that connection, smooth it out, get those lines painted on there, and to get all the expansion joints installed so that it's ready to go by 5 a.m. Tuesday. They are scheduled to have a press conference at about 8 o'clock this morning, so we'll get an update then as to the likelihood now of their opening at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Everybody's keeping their fingers crossed. All right, at 5:05, let's get an update now. Well, actually, if the bridge doesn't reopen, let's talk about that before we move on. If the bridge doesn't reopen tomorrow as scheduled, you do have some of your local transit agencies upping service to make sure you're getting to where you need to go. We're talking about BART. They're going to be running longer trains. Golden Gate Bridge and the transit agency there as well will be realigning their lanes to get flow into the city moving hopefully a little bit faster. faster, and they'll also be doubling up on the number of ferries that they're going to be running from the East Bay and the North Bay into San Francisco and vice versa. So that just some of the steps in the works now in case they do not make their 5 a.m. Tuesday deadline, but we'll keep you updated on that. And again, Caltrans will be giving us a press conference later on today. George Rask actually been following the latest as well. In fact, George, you were on the island over the weekend giving it a look. How are things looking to you?
They looked fabulous, James. The main project, the retrofit and the installation of the new section for the detour with a few hitches basically came off beautifully. The piece was slid into place as planned on Saturday, and you know, it's a shame that this crack, which was discovered during the inspection, it's a shame that this is sort of overshadowed this major project which has gone on and is really a little bit ahead of schedule. Had they not discovered this crack and had this problem, it's likely that the bridge would have been open sometime later today instead of tomorrow morning. Now, of course, we're dealing with whether or not they'll be able to get this fabricated splint locked into place in time, and there's also some testing that has to be done once it is installed. This is not official, James, but I'm still a betting man, and my bet is that the bridge is still going to open on time tomorrow morning at 5 and at the latest. However, if it doesn't, as you rightly point out, we could have a nightmare commute on our hands. Friday was one thing because so many people were prepared for it, but Monday, the day following a holiday, that could be a very different story, and we'll be talking about that as the morning wears on. This morning in Sausalito. All right, what are your plans for the day? Probably if you want to get outside, you want to know what the weather is going to be like, let's check in with Evelyn Taft.
Good morning, George. We're checking in right now on Storm Tracker for a gorgeous day to celebrate Labor Day. Perfect day for 80s around the bay with 70s and 60s by the coast. James.
All right, Evelyn, thank you much. 5:10 is the time, and again, there will be a vigil at 6:30 tonight at Presbyterian Church in Rockridge, the Rockridge area of Oakland, for missing 5-year-old Hassani Campbell. This all in the wake of the Oakland Police Department's declaring that the case is no longer a missing person, but in their eyes is a homicide case. Over 100 volunteers, including San Jose Search and Rescue, came out on Saturday to search areas in Fremont, including Lake Elizabeth, and they're hopeful that they will still find Hassani alive. The reward for information regarding Hassani is now at $60,000. And for continuing coverage on this story, keep it tuned here to KRON 4 and our website, KRON4.com. In fact, on that website, you'll catch all the video coverage, the news coverage that we've done so far, including interviews with Hassani's foster parents. All that found at KRON4.com. All right, 5:11 the time. We've got to take a quick break here, but we'll be back with more in just a moment. Let's go outside, give you another live look at the Bay Bridge. Again, our big story this morning continues to be the fact the bridge is shut down, closed, though we are counting down to its reopening, hopefully tomorrow at 5 a.m., although there's a fly in the ointment that could delay it. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Stay with us.